When I bought the house on Maple Ash Lane, all I wanted was a little peace. My job in cybersecurity was a 24/7 pressure cooker, and the modest four-bedroom home with a private backyard pool was my personal escape hatch. I'd sunk every extra cent into making that yard my sanctuary: stone-paved patio, ambient lighting, and a saltwater pool that shimmered like liquid glass under the Arizona sun. Enter Karen Whitmore. She moved in 3 months after I did. Bleached blonde hair pulled so tight it looked painful, pastel cardigans even in 90-degree heat, and a voice that could slice drywall. Within 2 weeks of arrival, she'd inserted herself into the HOA like a virus, first as secretary, then vice president, and finally president after orchestrating some kind of unofficial emergency election during a wine and cheese mixer. Her first executive action? Banning wind chimes. Her second? Mandating uniform mailbox colors. And so the reign of tyranny began. I avoided her, mostly. Let her play queen of the cul-de-sac while I kept to myself, headphones on and grill smoking. But avoidance only works until someone decides your silence is an invitation. It was a Saturday morning when I woke up to the unmistakable thump of bass reverberating through my walls. I glanced at the clock, 7:46 a.m., and staggered toward the window. Pink and blue balloons floated over my fence. A DJ booth had been erected near my garden beds. Strangers milled about in pastel outfits, sipping mimosas. Someone had even rolled in a portable snow cone machine. I blinked. Was I still dreaming? I stumbled down the stairs, flung open the back door, and was greeted by chaos. My backyard, had been transformed into the venue for what could only be described as a gender reveal circus. Streamers hung from the trees, folding chairs lined the edge of the pool, and in the middle of it all stood Karen, megaphone in one hand, champagne flute in the other, smiling like a step-forward warlord. I stormed across the patio. "Karen, what in God's name are you doing in my yard?" She turned casually, as though we were old friends meeting for brunch. "Oh, Dan, you're up. We weren't sure you'd be around, but I figured since you didn't RSVP, it meant you didn't mind." "Didn't RSVP to what?" "You're in my backyard." Karen beamed. "It's for my niece. Her baby reveal. She's having twins."
"Possibly."
We rented a cannon. As if on cue, a man wheeled in a massive device resembling a small artillery launcher, painted in pink and blue camo. He parked it beside my chaise lounge. I stared in horror. "You broke into my property." Karen tooted. "The side gate was unlocked. And you really should read your HOA emails. According to Clause 14b, any unused recreational space may be repurposed for community gatherings with reasonable notice." "This is not a communal space. It's my private property." Karen's expression didn't even twitch. "You accepted HOA landscaping funds last year for the fence line. That makes your backyard partially maintained by association funds. Shared resources, shared privileges." I didn't remember accepting anything of the sort. But even if I had, how did that give her the right to turn my home into her personal party zone? I looked around at the milling guests, none of whom seemed remotely concerned. One woman had her feet in the pool. A toddler was actively peeing on my garden gnome. Karen leaned in, her voice low and condescending. "Dan, don't be that neighbor. This is a happy occasion. It'll all be over in a couple hours. Then you can go back to whatever it is you do." She walked away before I could answer, raising her megaphone and shouting, "10 minutes to the big boom, everyone." I stood frozen, fists clenched, heart pounding. They had invaded my space, dismissed my ownership, and worst of all, they expected me to roll over. Something shifted inside me then, not just anger but resolve. This wasn't going to end with a cannon blast. It was going to end my way. The party ended just after noon. Pink powder now stained the pool tiles, ribbons floated in the water filter like drowned serpents, and the once pristine patio looked like a piñata had exploded during a natural disaster. My lounge chairs were stained. My grill had been moved to make room for Karen's cake table. And Karen? She left with a breezy "thanks, neighbor," and a glitter trail that might as well have been the salt in my wound. I didn't wait. I called the HOA office first thing Monday morning. I'd like to file a formal complaint, I said sharply. The receptionist, her tone syrupy, replied, "Oh, is this Mr. Ross? President Whitmore already informed us of your concern." Concern? I repeated.
Yes.
She filed a preemptive clarification on your property's community access status. Since the landscaping around your back fence was covered by HOA maintenance in 2022, it falls under temporary recreational use during board-approved events. That's absurd. We have it in writing, sir. She submitted the motion 2 weeks ago. No members objected, so it passed by default. Because no one knew about it. I hadn't seen an email, letter, flyer, nothing. She trespassed. That's a crime, I snapped. You need to speak with law enforcement about that, the receptionist said, clearly washing her hands of me. I hung up. My pulse thundered. I'd played it by the book. Now the book was being used to beat me over the head. I tried posting photos of the damage to the neighborhood Facebook group. The response was immediate, mixed but vocal. Some neighbors were horrified. Others called me petty. Karen, of course, posted a carefully worded rebuttal. So grateful to Dan for hosting such a beautiful celebration. Community spirit at its best. The comments were a minefield of emojis and passive-aggressive banter. And then came the notice. A folded sheet of paper taped to my front door in broad daylight. Violation notice. Hostile online behavior /HOA Discord. Fine. $100 per day until content is removed. WHA Compliance Board. I stared at the notice for a long time. My jaw clenched so tight, I could hear the creak in my molars. Karen had turned my private photos into an attack on community values. I considered a lawyer. Found one. Scheduled a consultation. He chuckled within 5 minutes of reviewing the HOA documents. Legally, she's full of it, he said. But if you want to fight this through court, you're looking at a long haul. HOA battles are slow, expensive, and emotionally draining. Most judges hate them. So what? I asked. I just live like this? The lawyer shrugged. Or get creative. That night, I stood on my patio with the porch light casting long shadows across the ruined pool. My haven, my peace, violated and repurposed like it was never mine. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused. Karen had turned my pool into a symbol of her control.
Fine.
I'd turn it into a symbol of her defeat. Over the next week, I kept to myself. No social media posts. No angry letters. No confrontation. I played the role of the quietly defeated neighbor, even waved at Karen once. Meanwhile, I filed a landscaping change request within the proper channels. I used the HOA's own terminology, temporary adaptive terrain modification. The project, I said, was environmental and recreational in nature, designed to encourage community wellness. The request was approved in 2 days. No objections. Karen didn't even ask questions. She was too busy soaking up the praise for her party, already planning a 4th of July luau at a surprise location.
Perfect.
By Friday, the water in my pool was gone, drained quietly overnight with a rented pump and a very long hose. The next day, a truckload of topsoil arrived. And then another. And another. Neighbors peeked over fences. Karen strolled by with her dog, sunglasses perched like a crown, and chirped, "Doing a backyard garden, Dan?" I smiled. Something like that. By Sunday afternoon, my pool was no longer a pool. It was a 5-foot-deep crater of dark, rich soil. Karen hadn't figured it out yet. But she would. And when she did, it would be far too late to stop what I had planned next. The transformation took exactly 6 days. By the following Friday, what had once been a tranquil, chlorinated pool was now a mud pit, deliberately engineered with the precision of a military operation. I'd mixed the soil with clay-rich compounds, added controlled irrigation beneath the surface, and installed a perimeter of hay bales and caution tape under the guise of erosion control. The HOA had no idea they'd approved the construction of a backyard wrestling arena. But this wasn't about spectacle. This was about poetic justice. I waited. Karen's luau invitation dropped the next day, slipped into every mailbox in the neighborhood. printed on glossy cardstock with flamingo graphics and pineapple font. Surprise location revealed day of, it read. Tropical attire required. I didn't have to wait long. That Sunday, at exactly 10:30 a.m., the neighborhood group chat lit up. OMG, it's Dan's yard again. Karen said it's a Hawaiian healing garden this time? Is that a pit? I stood at my kitchen window, sipping coffee as the herd arrived. Bamboo torches, folding tables, lawn chairs in neon colors. Some guests wore leis. Others had ukuleles. Karen arrived last, wearing a synthetic grass skirt and a flower crown like she was auditioning for the cover of Midlife Crisis Monthly. She strutted right through the side gate, still unlocked, just as I knew she'd expect, and gasped dramatically at the sight of the pit. "Oh my God," she shouted.
Dan.
What happened to the pool? I stepped outside, still holding my mug. You mean the temporary adaptive terrain modification? You approved it. Karen blinked, processing. This wasn't in your plans, she said, voice tight. It was, I replied.
You didn't object.
I even filed the environmental report. She glanced around nervously as more people poured in. Where's the DJ? Someone asked. Karen recovered quickly. We're doing a rustic luau. Very grounded. Very spiritual. The pit stole the show. Kids jumped in without hesitation. Adults followed, not wanting to look stiff. The next thing I knew, two dads were grappling in the mud to cheers and laughter. Karen tried to play it off, but the chaos was mounting. Her curated event had turned into a full-on mud wrestling free-for-all. A teenager began live-streaming the madness on Instagram. I leaned over to Karen, now plastered with flecks of dirt, her flower crown askew. This what you had in mind? She forced a grin, just a little messier than I expected.
Funny, I said.
I was thinking the same thing. By noon, someone brought out a hose. The mud pit became a war zone. I watched from a lawn chair, handing out water bottles and quietly documenting every second. Then came the moment I'd waited for. A loud rip echoed across the yard. Karen had slipped in the pit and landed hard. Her skirt caught on the edge of a bale, tearing halfway up her thigh. She scrambled to her feet, face red, hands flailing. Phones came out. Shutters clicked. Laughter erupted. Karen turned on me, wild-eyed. You did this, she hissed, voice trembling. Did what? Host a community gathering? Per Clause 14b, my yard is fair game, right? Her mouth opened, then shut. She had no retort. It was checkmate, and she knew it. She stormed out seconds later, leaving behind her guests, her party supplies, and a puddle of wounded pride. I didn't chase her. I didn't gloat. I simply uploaded the video montage that night. Nothing cruel, just footage of the pit, the party, and the mud-soaked queen of the HOA retreating with grass stuck to her backside. It went viral in the neighborhood group within minutes. By morning, the backlash had begun. Karen disappeared for 3 days. Her house went dark. No morning dog walks. No clipboard inspections. No passive-aggressive notes tucked under windshields. Just silence. The kind that only comes when someone's pride has been dragged through a backyard wrestling pit and broadcast to half the zip code. Meanwhile, the video of her mud-drenched retreat was still making rounds. Neighborhood teens set it to dramatic music. Someone photoshopped her face onto a pro wrestler mid-suplex. Even local businesses got in on it. Joe's Coffee Bar offered a Karen cappuccino for 1 week only. Mud-colored. Extra bitter. I didn't gloat, not publicly. I didn't need to. The neighborhood was doing it for me. Then, on Thursday, a notice arrived, not from Karen but from the HOA Compliance Committee, signed by 3 board members I barely recognized. Special Emergency Session, WHA Board Leadership Review. Friday at 6 p.m. Attendance strongly encouraged. That evening, the community center was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the hall. People murmured, many wearing mud-colored shirts and grinning like schoolchildren waiting for a substitute teacher. At the front of the room stood Karen, face taut, makeup overcompensating for the bruised ego beneath. The committee called the meeting to order. First came the formal complaints. Unauthorized use of private property, misappropriation of HOA communications, retaliatory fines without due process, and my personal favorite, neighborhood embarrassment and reputational damage. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. I was fostering community, she said. Dan's pool was an unused asset. We have legal precedent. He accepted HOA landscaping funds. A woman in the third row stood. Karen, the only thing unused is your common sense. You turn a neighbor's home into your personal event venue and then try to fine him for not liking it. Karen turned scarlet. One of the board members, Daryl, I think, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. We've reviewed the footage, the emails, the violations. It's clear that certain actions were taken without consent or transparency. We believe it's time for a leadership change. Karen lunged for the mic. You can't just vote me out. Another board member raised a hand. Actually, we can. It took less than 10 minutes. The vote passed by overwhelming majority. Karen was officially removed as HOA president. The room erupted. Some clapped. Some cheered. Someone played a victory jingle on their phone. I just sat quietly in the back row, arms crossed, letting the moment settle like ash after a fireworks show. Justice hadn't come quickly, but it had arrived. The next morning, I was out front sweeping my driveway when Karen walked past with her dog, now leashed and unusually well-behaved.
She paused.
For the first time since she'd invaded my world, she didn't look smug, or superior, or armed with bylaws and fake smiles. She looked small. Dan, she said, voice low. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I looked up.
Sure you did.
She flinched. I wanted to make things better around here, she added, quieter now. People don't listen to women like me. I thought if I took control, people might. You hijacked a man's backyard. I cut in. Then fined him for objecting. That wasn't leadership. That was theater. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. I leaned on my broom. There's a difference between being respected and being feared. You never figured that out. She nodded faintly, then walked on without another word. The mud pit? I kept it, converted it into a community garden, complete with benches and a shaded pergola. The neighbors came together to plant tomatoes, peppers, and sunflowers. We named it Karen's Garden. Not out of spite, out of irony. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's growth. As for me, I got my peace back. Mostly. The new HOA president, a retired firefighter named Luis, sent me a thank you card and a six-pack. He ended the note with, next time someone hijacks your yard, just call me. I've got a flamethrower. And just like that, Maple Ash Lane found its rhythm again. No more pop-up parties. No more pink cannons. Just a man, his garden, and the quiet victory of knowing that when the mud settled, the tyrant fell.